You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. First things first, I need to issue my usual apology. My Hebrew pronunciation is like an AI trying to sing karaoke in Klingon. It's not going to win any awards. So if I sound like I'm butchering a sacred word, just imagine me shrugging with that sheepish oops emoji face. With that out of the way, let's dive in. Today's topic is the Samaritans. No, not the Good Samaritan from the New Testament story that a church Sunday school teacher may have mentioned, but the actual historical community that has lived in the Middle East for over 2,000 years. And here's the plot twist. These aren't just characters in some dusty Bible passage. They're a real group of people who still exist today, with their own Torah scrolls, priests, traditions, and yes, even their own Passover sacrifice. Think of them as Judaism's long-lost cousins who took a different path on the family road trip. So, who are the Samaritans? If you picture the Israelite family tree as a giant sitcom cast, the Samaritans are that one branch of cousins who stopped coming to Thanksgiving and decided to host their own dinner instead. Historically, they trace themselves back to the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, two of Joseph's sons, and also to the Levites. Their story gets intertwined with the northern kingdom of Israel after the split from the southern kingdom of Judah. When the Assyrians came along and exiled much of the northern kingdom in the 8th century BCE, some Israelites stayed behind. These remaining Israelites, combined with newcomers that the Assyrians resettled, eventually became what we know as the Samaritans. To the Samaritans, they're the real keepers of the ancient Israelite faith. To mainstream Jews, well, let's just say it was complicated. There was tension, rivalry, and mutual accusations of, "You're doing it wrong." Here's the core difference. Samaritans believe that Mount Gerizim, near the modern city of Nablus, not Jerusalem, is the true holy place chosen by God. Imagine if two siblings both wanted the same bedroom, and one painted it blue while the other swore it was supposed to be green. That's basically Israel and Samaria arguing over the holy site. For Samaritans, Jerusalem was the knockoff brand. Gerizim was the original Apple iPhone. Their Torah, which they still read from in the ancient Hebrew script, looks very much like the Jewish Torah, but with subtle differences that always point back to Gerizim. So while Jews prayed toward Jerusalem, Samaritans turned their faces toward Gerizim. That disagreement fueled centuries of hostility, like a never-ending debate over which pizza place is the best in town. Except instead of pizza, it was temples, priests, and divine authority at stake. The Samaritans didn't just argue in theory, there were actual temple rivalries. The Jews had their temple in Jerusalem, while the Samaritans built their own temple on Mount Gerizim. In fact, around the 2nd century BCE, the Jewish leader John Hyrcanus, part of the Hasmonean dynasty, marched up there and destroyed the Samaritan temple. Talk about awkward family drama. Imagine a sibling knocking down the other's treehouse because they insisted their treehouse was the only legitimate hangout spot. Ever since then, relations were pretty frosty. By the time of the New Testament, Samaritans were basically viewed by Jews as outsiders who had gone off track. That's why when Jesus told a story about a good Samaritan, it was meant to shock people, like saying, the hero of the story is your rival who roots for the other football team. That cultural tension gives the parable its punch, but the real Samaritans were very much their own people, with their own faith. Fast forward to today, and here's the wild part. The Samaritans never disappeared. They're still here. Granted, their numbers are tiny, about 800 people total, split between two communities, one near Mount Gerizim in the West Bank, and the other in Holon, a city near Tel Aviv. Picture the world's smallest Facebook group that actually meets in real life, generation after generation, keeping their traditions alive. They still have priests, who trace their lineage all the way back to Aaron, Moses' brother. They still celebrate Passover with an actual animal sacrifice on Mount Gerizim, roasting lambs outdoors in massive pits, a practice that Jews stopped after the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed 2,000 years ago. Seeing videos of it online is like watching a time machine in action. Ancient Israelite rituals happening in the 21st century while people record them on their iPhones. But let's zoom into what they believe. The Samaritans accept only the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, as their scripture. Forget the prophets, the writings, and all the rabbinic debates in the Talmud. They stop at Moses. Their religion is laser-focused on keeping the Torah as they understand it, with Mount Gerizim as the centerpiece. They have their own calendar, slightly different from the Jewish one, and their prayers are in ancient Hebrew and Aramaic. And while Jews developed a massive oral tradition with commentary upon commentary, the Samaritans went the other way. No Talmud, no Mishnah, just scripture and priestly leadership. If Judaism is like a giant franchise with spin-offs, expansions, and commentaries, Samaritanism is the original indie film that refused to do sequels. That simplicity makes their religion both fascinating and fragile, like an ancient app that still runs but never got an update. Of course, with such small numbers, survival hasn't been easy. At different times in history, Samaritans faced persecution, forced conversions, and massacres. Their population shrank dramatically over the centuries, from hundreds of thousands in late antiquity down to just a few hundred by the 20th century. Today, they face unique challenges, like keeping the community going without too much intermarriage. Genetic health issues became a problem, so in recent decades, they've carefully allowed marriages with outsiders who are willing to adopt Samaritan practices. It's like trying to keep a very rare, very old family recipe alive. You need new ingredients sometimes, but you also don't want to lose the flavor that makes it special. So, while their numbers are small, they've been remarkably resilient, adapting just enough to keep their ancient identity intact. Culturally, Samaritans live in a fascinating in-between world. They speak Hebrew and Arabic, live under both Israeli and Palestinian jurisdictions, and often see themselves as a bridge between worlds. Their Passover sacrifice brings Jewish and Palestinian visitors together to watch, making it one of those rare cultural events where different communities mingle. Their texts are studied by scholars worldwide because the Samaritan Torah provides insights into how the biblical text developed. In some ways, they've become like living time capsules of the ancient Israelite religion, preserving elements that mainstream Judaism moved away from. And yet, they're not relics. They're modern people with jobs, families, and smartphones, balancing an ancient priesthood with 21st century life. It's like having neighbors who still do everything the old way, but also binge Netflix and complain about traffic. So, what do Jews today think of the Samaritans? It depends who you ask. Some see them as historical curiosities, like living fossils of an ancient faith. Others see them as cousins with a complicated relationship, close enough to recognize, but different enough to keep at arm's length. Jewish tradition has some harsh words about Samaritans, especially in the rabbinic texts, accusing them of mixing up laws or not being fully trustworthy. Yet there are also moments of recognition that they are, in a way, part of the same extended family story. Today, most Jews probably don't think about Samaritans much at all, unless they stumble across them in a Bible class or see a documentary. But for those who do learn about them, it's like discovering a secret sibling branch of Judaism that most people never talk about. To wrap things up, the Samaritans are a small but mighty reminder of how diverse the Israelite family tree became. They're not just a parable character or a footnote in ancient history. They're real people with a living tradition that has survived empire after empire, from Assyrians to Romans to Ottomans to the modern Middle East. Their story is about resilience, identity, and the complicated ways families split and redefine themselves. Think of them as Judaism's alternate timeline, like when Marvel Comics shows you what would have happened if Spider-Man had made one different choice. The Samaritans made a different choice, stuck with it for over 2 millennia, and are still here to tell the tale. And that makes them one of the most fascinating little-known communities in the world today. Thanks for listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of the Samaritans, one of Judaism's most intriguing cousins. If you like this episode, please forward it to a friend who might also get a kick out of it. And if you really enjoyed it, leaving a positive review helps other people find the podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep laughing along the way.